And welcome back to Dr. Phil's Merit TV. Chris Gutierrez alongside Joe Gum. We have immigration attorney Deron Smallcomb is with us as well. We're going to get to Deron in just a second. But first, Deron, we want to get your reaction to this graph. Take a look. We've got shows the number or who is crossing the U.S.-Mexico border. This is single adults when Trump was in office compared to when Biden was in office. We also have family units. Again, the same thing. Trump was in office compared to when Biden took office. And then we also, finally, we want to show you unaccompanied minors, children who are traveling alone. Trump in office compared to Biden in office. You are kind enough to join us today. A busy day here on the News on Merit TV because Dr. Phil getting rare exclusive access as these very targeted raids are taking place in Chicago. Number one, your thoughts on Donald Trump coming into office. He campaigned on this. It's happening. Your thoughts as an immigration attorney?
Well, I don't want to sound like a political hack, but promises made, promises kept. I mean, this is what he said he's going to do, and he's done it right from the beginning, right? Everything's changed. And so we've already seen that change right from the start where there's no more entry. CBP 1 was canceled on the first day. All appointments were canceled. And, this is the first step. And so we've had to go back to our old methods. Now, see, I've been doing immigration law since George Bush was president, right? So I've seen a lot of different administrations and a lot of different approaches to how this is done. And the way we used to have to do it was to contact CBP directly if we wanted to coordinate some sort of asylum seekers entry, right? We would provide all of this information as to whether they are qualified for it, why they are at risk to be in Mexico and things of this nature. And then usually they would get back to us within a reasonable period of time and go or no go. Once CBP 1 came in, the floodgates just opened. And so that's been going on now for well over 2 years, and it's been a market change, and that's why we see the numbers go up.
I feel as if our great-great-grandkids are going to be talking about the same thing, because during this election, you had two sides. If you said, hey, we're securing the border, but everyone felt like you were lying, then you'd bring in this. Well, we need to fix immigration. So I always felt like, well, let's fix the border, then we'll deal with immigration. Are we going to continue to deal with immigration forever? Because that's what it seems like.
Well, we're going to continue to deal with immigration because we need to. Quite frankly, we don't have enough children in this country to where we don't have a replacement population amongst ourselves. So we need immigrants to come into the country. The question is, what type of immigrants are we going to bring in? And that's the focus. Right now, it's on enforcement. I wrote a whole book about the post-enforcement phase. Once we kind of get past this time in history to where the people that we don't necessarily want in are coming in, how do we focus on bringing in the best and the brightest from around the world here and create pathways for that? That's what really needs to be the next step, in my opinion.
Are you hearing from clients? Are people scared? Are people nervous? I mean, what are you hearing from people?
Yeah, people are scared and nervous, absolutely. We have a lot of people reach out. So our policy within the firm right now is to give actionable information to people the best that we can, to not take advantage of their fear, right? And only help the ones that we would want as neighbors here, And it sounds kind of harsh, but the people that are having enforcement actions taken against them right now are legitimate criminals for the most part, right? I mean, you cast a wide net. I used this analogy in our meeting on Wednesday. I said, the government's going to cast a wide net, just like a fishing boat right now, to catch as much as possible, right? They're going to keep the tuna, and we want them to. But the dolphins and the other things that come in there, that's our job to fix it. So we're trying to get the people that shouldn't be deported now, that have a legitimate, lawful process going on, but that got picked up just incidentally. Those ones we want to put a defense for. But if somebody committed a crime, particularly any sort of crime of violence, our firm has no interest in that.
But have you heard of any people who've been rounded up and shouldn't have been?
Not yet. Not yet.
So what does that tell you?
Yeah, it's pretty targeted actions right now.
Yeah, and Dr. Phil said that with Tom Homan. Ask him, just say, listen, because up here in Chicago, the media, they're trying to make it look like you're rounding up grandmas and little babies and putting them on a bus and shipping them off. A lot of people, Deron, heard this during the election, asylum. Separate fact from fiction. You can come through and say, I want to file for asylum and be legal or be illegal, or those you're getting calls. So those with asylum, are they calling you? Or those who sort of wandered in and said, grab, shift, release, we're going to let you in illegally, but you're a grandma, maybe you pay taxes, you got a job, you're setting up shop, you're sweet. We're not going to let you go.
there's a lot of people that use the guise of asylum.
And that's
right?
the key.
Yeah,
That's
that is
the key.
And I'll tell you, as an immigration attorney, it really is frustrating for us because our success rate on asylum cases, no matter what the administration, has been 80, 90% success, right? That's well above the national average because
Within your office?
Within our office.
Oh, yeah, that's huge
Yeah.
success.
It's very high success because we screen our clients. We're looking for the people that truly, if they were returned home, they would be killed for their political opinion or their religious practices or something like this, right? And so we screen really hard before we take these clients. And what's happened is with this flood of, let's call it economic asylees, you know, which I understand you want a better life, but that's not the reason for claiming asylum. It has clogged the system so bad that the legitimate asylum seekers are disadvantaged tremendously.
Yeah, let's talk about that because it is, well, first of all, in your best estimate, what is the percentage of people who are granted asylum?
Probably about 30%.
So 30%. That's why I'm saying what you guys are doing is remarkable. You really are kind of filtering through who you take on as clients. So if 30% is the average, think about this because you know better than anybody. The bar is high for asylum, right? You shouldn't be able to show up at our southern border and say, I live in a bad neighborhood and I can't find a job.
Correct.
That's not asylum. But over the past 4 years, that was working.
That was, and it's partially, a lot of people don't see it. Asylum is a very deep topic, but what happens is from the Attorney General down. So during the last Trump administration, let's say for a Mexican citizen, cartel involvement was not a reason to claim asylum, right? It wasn't enough. Okay, the cartel's harassing you. That's too bad, move to a different part of Mexico, right? That was the policy of Attorney General Barr. Once Merrick Garland came in, that changed. And then it was, no, cartel activity is a basis for a claim for asylum, right? So then every judge had to consider that, whereas before they did not. And that's one of the primary claims for people, let's say, that are citizens of Mexico to claim.
But but the judge has to consider that, but it doesn't happen right away. And therein lies the problem, right? Because and correct me if I'm wrong, this is what you do every day. If I come in, I say, I'm seeking asylum, okay, great, here's your paperwork, we'll see you in court in 2027.
Yeah, that's real frustrating. We have cases out to 2029 right now. If
Bingo.
you can believe that, you know?
But therein lies the problem.
Yeah, and that's what's really frustrating is when you have these legitimate people, like they're in limbo for a long time. You know, just getting, like, depending on the administration, getting a work permit, for example, is a challenge. If you have a legitimate case, it's almost 100% chance you're going to win. Like, there's these certain categories of cases where we've had scores of them. We always win, 100%. We know it's going to win because you sending them back would be a death sentence. You know, it's 100%. And so, but these people are sitting here twisting in the wind for years because other people that are claiming asylum don't have legitimate cases and they're not showing up. And I'll tell you, Chris, one of the most interesting things, I went into a particular courthouse in California once, a more remote courthouse, to do a case. And they called 40 or 50 names, right? And not a single person showed up before I got to mine. Wow. Not a single person was there.
They don't know where they are.
They have no idea. They're just like, you know, I don't want to say the name because I don't want to cast aspersions on a particular group, but it's like they say the name, not here. Okay, removal in absentia. Okay, name, not here, removal in absentia.
But the point is, that's one courthouse in California.
Yeah.
Those courthouses are across the country.
Totally. Yeah.
And it's happening everywhere.
Yeah.
A lot.
I was going to say, I don't think I have enough time to ask you to get the answer. How do you fix that? But I did want to ask you this. The focus in the last 4 years of the Biden administration, we keep going back because of how bad it was. We're talking about not the family of, you know, the 55-year-old man with his wife, 2 kids, maybe a grandchild, that type of thing, seeking asylum because of politics, and they come in, you help them. How many people are you seeing that, we've talked about the young military man with IT degrees from China, Iran, and then you just kind of India, you just kind of go down the list going, wait a second here.
Joe, you won't believe it, but since that's probably the majority group of people that are seeking asylum right now, that is probably 1 or 2% of the calls that we get. They're not interested in representation.
Wow. Help our viewers at home understand what rises to the high bar of asylum. What are the...
There's some examples. For example, like we handle a lot of Russian-speaking clients in general from the former Soviet Union. So there's some religions there that you just can't practice freely, like Jehovah's Witness, for example. If you're a Jehovah's Witness, a devout one, There's instances where they are taking custody of your children because they consider it a cult and an extremist organization, right? And these people just want to practice their religion. So on these type of cases, where there's these documented events, that have happened to so many people, if you're devout, the question is when you go to court, it's like, okay, you're Jehovah's Witness, prove it. Are you going to church here? Are you doing X, Y, and Z? And if these things are all true, and you're a citizen of Russia, for example, you're probably going to get asylum. These are like slam dunk cases. There's some countries in the world where if you're a part of the LGBT community or something like that, then you're not going to survive long if that's known, right? And so some people have had some really terrible things happen to them, and then this could be a claim. Those don't always win, but they're usually pretty successful. You have political dissidents in countries that, let's say, are seeking freedom but are run by a dictator, right? And people speak out, and they're journalists, and they have publicized their name, and they've received death threats or been thrown in jail or prison. They get out. The first thing they do is get out of the country. We've had a lot of success with those as well. So these are the type of cases that generally we see that we have a lot of success with over time. Other cases are more difficult to prove, and it's generally economic migration. Again, from a personal standpoint, I understand they want a better life. They can only make, $5 a day at home. It's hard to support a family. We're close. Everybody else is doing it. Why not give it a shot? And so a lot of people do that, but unfortunately, that doesn't work for America anymore.
Right.
It never really did, quite frankly.
When I talk to my sources in the Border Patrol, the one thing that they all seem to always agree on is ending catch and release, and allowing the whoever's in charge, whoever lives at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, allowing them to enforce the laws on the books.
Yeah.
Ending catch and release. And they almost always say, if we can get that asylum judge on the front side instead of the back side, you'd see these 30% number. You'd see that 70 that are hoping go back sooner instead of being released. But again, it's changed now because Donald Trump has come in and he's with the executive action.
Yeah, it's a lot different. Well, 2 points on that. Number one, catch and release, it really doesn't work, but the selectivity that they've been using, at least over the last 4 years, is what's really frustrating. So again, I mentioned these clients in certain categories that have almost a certainty of being granted asylum, and many of them have relatives, American citizens in the United States. They've hired an attorney. They're going to show up to court. It's like a 100% chance. Why are these people being detained? And they have been, quite frankly, picking on the Russians in particular, that have come that are political dissidents and other things. They won't let them out. Yet at the same time, these military-age men from other countries are being caught and then released instantly because they're not on the list. They're not Russia bad. And so that's been really frustrating. So that's point number one. Point number two, and I'm not trying to plug my book, but I write extensively about this idea of what I would call a 21st century Ellis Island. So if we were to create stopping points at the border, okay, everybody gets a chance to claim asylum. We are going to have a designated area on the border where you do that. You immediately show up. Within 24 to 48 hours, you are interviewed by an asylum officer. If you're determined that you have a credible fear, your identity checks out, everything else, you're going to more than likely win your case. Okay, then we could talk about where you're going to be for this next period of time. If you don't, you get an appeal, as is allowed by law, with an immigration judge there on the spot. We're talking 24 to 48 hours. We're not housing you other than for the short period of time. And you're going to get everything that's allowed to you by law, that's written and codified by law, that executive order can't change. A decision is made, and you are either deported, right, doing an expedited removal so you don't clog up the system, or you are reviewed as to far as what we're going to do with you until you have a final case hearing. And if you have something like that, not only does the principle of asylum get upheld, which I think is a real American principle, we want to be that shining light, but at the same time, it's a deterrent for those that would come and say, oh, I'm just going to claim asylum. I'm afraid for my life. Let me in, give me a work permit. I'm going to be here for 5 years.
That's right.
And
that's
if those people are deterred from that, they'll stop coming.
Yep. No, I've seen it, and I've heard it from so many people down along the border, Deron. Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate it, man. Thank you for your insight. Yep. All right, we want to bring in Lindsay Keith again, our chief White House correspondent.